Wendy's is one of the only fast food places to serve chili, and let's be honest, it's pretty good. It dates back to the earliest days of Wendy's when founder Dave Thomas added it to the menu as a way to avoid wasting burgers. Instead of discarding the unsold burgers, they chopped them up and they threw them in the chili the next day. Genius, right? Decades later, it's still on the menu and one of the most popular items. I absolutely love the taste of Wendy's chili, but if you ever looked at their ingredients, they're a little junky and less than natural. But today we're going to keep it fresh and natural. We're going to use some elevated ingredients and we're going to bump up the flavor big time. For the full ingredient list, check the description box below, but enough talking, let's get cooking. So this is everything that we're going to use in this chili. I really didn't have to prep much. I just prepped these onions. I got a little bit of celery here and some green bell peppers. That's it for fresh stuff. Oh, almost forgot my giant pile of garlic. This is about 6 to maybe 10 cloves that I chopped up really fine. It's not a Chef Ange recipe unless it's got a bunch of garlic in it. We got our canned beans and a nice secret ingredient that I like to use when I do my chili. So this is a diced tomato from Rotel, and it's got some of these green chilies already in the can. This is a really nice, sneaky pantry product. And we're gonna just throw in some tomato sauce for our tomato base. For beef, we went with the 93.7 ground beef. So this is pretty lean. A lot of times when you're making chili, you'll have to pour off the fat. If you start with a lean enough beef, you're not gonna have to pour off the fat. Whatever's in here will go in there and it's plenty. We're gonna season it with a lot of chili powder. I mean, that's why they call it chili. And I also got a backup of some ancho chili powder and some cumin. And for some additional flavor enhancement, we're gonna put in some of this Worcester sauce. This is a new pronunciation I picked up from all my British friends in the comment section. Let me know how you take on this difficult English word. And we got some of my base seasonings, a blend of garlic powder, onion powder, salt, and pepper. If you don't have the recipe for this, I feel sorry for you. And this is some maple syrup. This is some homemade stuff from my friend who lives in the Midwest. They make their own maple syrup. I get a couple jars every year and I use it every year. This is an unbelievable ingredient to put inside chili. Wendy's puts sugar inside their chili, so we're gonna sweeten it up and use this instead. And to liquefy it, we're gonna use some just regular beef broth. So we're gonna do one thing with our ground beef before we start, because Wendy's uses old hamburgers as the meat for their chili. So they're already cooked, it's already seasoned like a hamburger. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna break this up and season it with some salt and pepper, just like we would if we were making a burger. So before we season it, we're gonna break up the ground beef with our hands just into like big crumbles. This is gonna help us get the meat crumbled inside the pan a little bit easier. This is also gonna give a really nice surface area for our seasoning to stick to, so we're not just seasoning the outside and the seasoning doesn't get in on the inside. So I'm gonna break this up into just little crumbles. Because this is a lean beef, I'm gonna add a little bit of olive oil to the outside of here because this is not gonna render fat out really fast because it really doesn't have much. So to get it going a little bit and get a nice sear on the outside of this beef, we're gonna add a little bit of olive oil to get started. Now we're gonna come in with some salt and pepper. Just gonna give this just a real light mix so some of the seasoning gets around the outside, but I'm trying not to get it super crumbly, just a little crumbly. Now let's get over to the stove and start cooking this chili. First, I'm gonna add a little bit of olive oil on the bottom before I add my meat. Just gonna cover the bottom of the pan or pot. And now in goes the ground beef. So I'm not gonna touch the beef for a little bit because I really wanna get a good sear on it. I wanna make sure that it's mimicking like cooking a hamburger. And I would cook a hamburger, I would get a really nice sear on the bottom of it with this super hot pan. So I'm gonna let this go before I start messing around and start crumbling it up. So you can see here on this meat that I got like a nice sear on the outside of that, just same way that I would on a burger. So now I know that we've got the heat up high enough, we got nice color on this meat. That's just gonna give us some nice additional authentic like hamburger-ish flavor. Now I'm gonna start crumbling up this beef with my wooden spatula. Now that our beef is fully cooked, we're gonna add some onions, green bell pepper, and our celery. And give this a mix. I've also turned the heat down from When I was browning that beef, I was up on high. Now I'm probably at like a medium, maybe even a touch above medium, just to soften up these onions, the peppers, and the celery. This pan is looking just a little dry, so I'm gonna add just a touch more olive oil. After these have softened up a little bit, we're gonna add our garlic. I'm gonna give that a chance to get nice and fragrant. Once I smell that garlic, then you know it's good enough time to move on to the next step. This is when I like to add some of my dry ingredients. So I'm gonna start off with the chili powder, ancho chili powder, cumin, and a heavy sprinkle of my bay seasoning. Now I'll start mixing this in so these spices can get nice and toasty. Toasting the spices before you add the liquid ingredients can really help add another layer of delicious flavor on top of all these ingredients. So once I mix this in nicely and it's well incorporated into the vegetables and the oil that's already in there, I'm gonna let this cook for just a minute before we add our wet stuff. Now let's start off with our beans. One of the things I'm gonna do on this recipe is I'm gonna dump the whole can in with the liquid and all. And when I do that, the liquid from the canned beans is gonna help thicken up the sauce so I don't have to put any cornstarch or any gums or any thickeners in here. Now we're gonna put in our rotel with our green chilies, some nice tomato sauce, a little bit of our Worcester sauce. And again, let me know in the comment section how you tackle this word. Worcester is the best one that I got from all the British people in the comment section. Thanks, guys. Cheers. And now we're going to put in some of this amazing maple syrup. You may not be able to get your hands on this, but use any maple syrup. This is just some high quality stuff. It's super smoky and it's an unbelievable ingredient that adds sweetness and this like deep, mapley, smoky flavor. And it's way better than the sugar that Wendy puts in. Now, before I add my beef broth, I'm gonna give this just a little bit of a stir just to see what kind of consistency we're working with. So this is just a little thick, so I'm gonna put a couple splashes of this beef broth in, not too much. And that's the nice consistency that I'm looking for. The Wendy's chili is a little soupier than like a chili that goes on top of like a hot dog or a burger. So you want it to have a little bit of a runny consistency. They serve it with saltines for a reason. So now we're gonna bring this up to a boil and then we're gonna cover it and simmer it for about an hour. So now I'm gonna put the cover on it and stir this about every 10 or 15 minutes for about an hour. This chili smells absolutely unbelievable. Super hearty, super delicious, and it looks a lot like the Wendy's chili because there's so many different kinds of versions of chili. If I had to look at this, I'd be like, this is like a Wendy's chili. So now let's plate our Wendy's chili in the same cup, but this is Chef Ange's version, so move over, Wendy. I'm a little sloppier than I'd like to be. But I don't think the Wendy's that's gonna come out of the bag is gonna be even better. But before we try our chili, let's try the original. So here is some chilies from Wendy's. One thing I never knew is you could ask to put cheese on top of it. Who knew? So let's go in and let's take a big bite of this and let's see what this tastes like. So from the looks of it, they're really similar colors. The beans look exactly the same, about the same amount of meat to bean ratio, at least it looks like from this chili. But let's take a bite and let's see what Wendy's did. It's not a bad chili. It's pretty good. It's got some nice heartiness to it, but the flavors can be a little bit bland. Now that I see this big hamburger chunk, I wish I left the beef a little chunkier in mine, but let's take this big bite with this big meat chunk on it. Now that we have something to compare it to, let's try our chili. So the colors are really, really similar. The meat to beef ratio or the bean to meat ratio is very similar. This is gonna be a little hotter. We just made it. We didn't have to drive it here. Even after just one spoonful, we can clearly taste the difference that this is a homemade, heartier, way more flavorful version. There are layers of flavors are going on here. That thing tastes like school lunch now. And I really think that I did a good job of staying close to the original recipe because it tastes very similar, but just better. Chili is an unbelievable food item to freeze. So whenever you want it, you can just defrost it and it's ready in minutes. So probably faster than driving to Wendy's and going back home. You could have some fresh, delicious, yummy chili that blows the Wendy stuff out of the water. And in these cold months, chilies, soups, and stews are king. So check out my lentil soup recipe. I'm sure you'll like it. Thanks, and I'll see you there.